with an ominous cover like this, you might think that Kelley Armstrong's new book, Omens, is just scary and creepy. And there are some moments, there are some chills and thrills, but it's fun and it's funny. Though, Kelley, I don't know if our readers will believe me about that when I tell them that the main character finds out that she's adopted and her birth parents were sociopathic serial killers. It's pretty grisly.
No, and it is. I mean, you really have to find some humor deep in there, but the overall is, what if you found out that your parents were serial killers? How would you look at yourself wondering what you might have inherited from them?
And especially if you've been adopted into a very wealthy family and you're a socialite and you find this out. Olivia is the main character in the book, and she reacts as close to what I think a real person would. And Kelley, all the books you've written, I think one of the reasons you have such a huge fan base is the reality. The characters, especially the women that you write, are so real, and that's obviously an important part of the books for you.
It is, and it really is. I'm often asked, well, how do you create strong female characters? And I say, I just set out to create characters like women I see around me. And some of them are physically strong, some are, geniuses, and some have other types of strength. And it's finding all those types of strength and building characters that are what I think real women.
Yes, there are no stereotypes in your books, and I've read many of your books, and Omens lives up to that as well. And I want to talk a little bit about Olivia and her background, because one of the things I find very interesting about what you do is you don't try and trick your reader or lead them astray. You lay out some things right in the prologue of the book that is going to color how the reader reads this. And it's important, it seems to me that it must be important to you not to put a bunch of red herrings into your book.
It is, and certainly with the mystery you want some, but I also want to sort of give the reader the best and fullest groundwork coming in, so that when Olivia finds out that her parents are serial killers, we have already seen in the prologue her interacting with her parents and gotten an impression of her parents from that, rather than having her say, well, I remember my parents being like this, because narrator might be unreliable.
So we've got the serial killers, and again, the murders that you describe are pretty grisly, and Olivia goes on a path against kind of her better judgment, but to try and prove her birth parents' innocence. It takes her to a town called Canesville, and that's where Omens is the start of what is a new trilogy, and probably, hopefully, maybe longer than a trilogy, but centered around the town of Canesville. And I want to talk a bit about Canesville because it's obviously got its secrets, and you reveal them slowly, but there's a lot of clues in there for readers. It's not as dark and horrifying and scary and evil place like we talked about off camera, Derry, in Stephen King books, but it's definitely got its dark secrets, but it's also very welcoming to Olivia as well.
It is. It's the kind of place that if you are the right sort of person could be very welcoming, and it's never going to be a place where you are in serious danger unless you were to bother them. Kind of like, a wild animal. You just don't go around poking at it. But if you leave them alone, they will leave you alone. And in this case, and if you fit in, then it becomes a very protective town, but it does definitely have a dark side. It's just not going to end up being some horrifying secret that causes her to run in the middle of the night and never come back.
Well, a lot of the secrets are based around the title of the book, Omens, and that was a lot of fun is reading. Olivia is one of those people who is able to read superstitions, the number of crows on a wire, a black cat crossing your path, and I learned so much from this book. Did you know that a black cat washing itself means a storm is coming? Flipping your pillowcases to get good dreams. You obviously had to do a lot of research into omens.
I did, and it was a lot of fun because I've gotten a lot of that growing up, and while I don't consider myself a superstitious person, I'm fascinated by them, and I'm fascinated by the psychology behind them. Why do we believe in these things when we know deep down it's probably not true that if you forget your lucky shirt, you're going to fail the job interview, and yet we continue believing that. But I did do intensive research, and it was a lot of fun research, going through books on omens and superstitions and saying, what can I use? I mean, some of them are just so outlandish that they wouldn't make any sense to into a modern world. But there were plenty, like the pillowcase. If you have it with the opening facing out, your bad dreams will escape. And you can see some old kind of logic there, but it is one that even today people will flip their pillowcases out just in case.
And you talk about that old logic, and obviously my sense of Cainesville is that it's going to have some pretty deep historical roots. There's going to be a lot of ancient magic and omens and portents in this town. A lot of ancient secrets.
It does, definitely. It's a very, I can just say it is a very old town, and it was founded for a certain reason, and everything that is strange in that town is for a purpose.
And you're not giving too much away, and that's great, because Cainesville kind of takes a bit of a back seat in this book to the murders, and Olivia's trying to solve her parents, to prove their innocence. She hooks up with a private investigator, and Kelly, it is, again, out of all the books I've read of yours, it's what I love is you do not fall back on romantic cliches. Olivia and Gabriel have a bit of tension going there, but he's not your typical hero, and I love that about him. He's got his flaws, and he's very, very human.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's got a deep backstory, which I find really helps. But he's not somebody who's going to turn out to be the knight in shining armor by page 400. What he's got is some lasting damage, lasting, psychological issues, and so on that Olivia discovers, and it helps her understand him. But she will say later, understanding where that comes from doesn't mean that I accept that his behavior is okay. And I think that's very important too. You can say, I understand why someone acts that way. I'm not going to accept it towards me.
Right, and a lot of books tend to wrap their characters up in neat bows like that, and you don't do that, which I really enjoy in your books. But and the two of them are funny, very funny together. They can be in the middle of investigating these horrific, really quite grisly murders, and I'm laughing at their interactions.
They were just two characters who play off well against each other. I would almost call it chemistry. That, of course, I created them, so why can't I always create characters with that chemistry? But sometimes it just clicks. And when I'm writing dialogue for them, the dialogue clicks, their personalities click. And if anything with these two, I have to go back and cut down on their dialogue, because I can have a lot of fun with their banter, but if it's not moving the plot forward, it has to be in small doses.
And moving the plot forward, this book ends with a little bit of the mystery solved, but a lot more questions, and it is definitely going to have readers hooked on wanting the second and the third books. Hooking readers is obviously something you do really well in the Otherworld series. How are readers responding to the fact that is, for all intents and purposes, wrapped up, or is it?
For the Otherworld series, I was really pleased. When I announced that it was ending, a lot of the response was, I'm sorry to see it go, but I'm looking forward to what you do next. That's exactly the response that a writer wants. They don't want to hear, thank God you're ending it, and they don't want to hear, no, I won't read anything else by you until you go back. You certainly do get readers who are saying, I won't read Omens, because if I don't buy it, you will be forced to go back and write the characters I love, which I love their intensity and their devotion, but I think that had I gone much further in that series, they would have gotten bored.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you was the Otherworld series are narrated, each book, by a different character, and within Omens, you give us glimpses. It's narrated by Olivia, but we do get to see how other people perceive her. We get into the minds of some of the characters. Are your other books going to be all narrated by Olivia, or are you going to break them up into different characters as well?
They'll all be similar to this. Okay. So it will be Olivia as the first-person main narrator, with bringing in those third persons for things that she cannot know, and for thoughts on her, and so on. In the past, I've changed narrators more frequently, and it's because the character arcs aren't quite as compressed. I didn't need to get the character where they were going in a short period of time. Olivia does. For her own good, she needs to find out what's going on, and it's going to take me more than one book to do it.
Well, I'm very much looking to the rest of this series. Thank you very much, Kelly.